Greetings, viewers and listeners. This is Chris Frederick of the Stretchman Institute, and I'm very excited to be with the Paleo Cardiologist, and that's what he is referred to, as well as a book that he wrote of the same title. So with no further ado, here is Dr. Jack Wolfson. Greetings and welcome.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you today. When we met maybe a year and a half ago, it was really interesting because, we talked about my book and we talked about a book that you wrote, Stretch to Win. And I said, wait a second. I said, I bought that book years ago. And how or why I bought it, I mean, just being in kind of a little bit in the fitness world and liking to stay, active and physically fit, saw this book and picked it up and read it, and you and Anne, and here I get to meet you, and now I get to talk to you on by interview. So it's really great.
It is really great. It's really awesome. And just a little disclosure to everyone listening, I have a personal motivation in this field of paleo cardiology and heart disease because my father passed away from having a history of it. He died of a fatal heart attack in his 70s, despite following all the things that his cardiologist asked him to follow. And so then I had my own event in September of 2014 while teaching. Some of my students were there. And luckily, they said there was no heart damage, even though I did have an MIA or heart attack. And I survived that. Unfortunately, I still needed some surgery, or at least that's what they told me to do in the ER. And here we are today. And I have to say, I haven't felt better, honestly, than after starting seeing you, Dr. Wolfson. Changed over from my allopathic cardiologist to you. So I feel, I don't think I've ever felt better, honestly. I feel like I'm on the road to health with all the things that you've asked me to do. I'm trying to follow as closely as possible, but this interview is not about me. That's just a little bit background of how I met you and how I got involved in all of this. And just I'm excited to interview you. So let's start with, why do you call yourself the Paleo Cardiologist?
Well, the paleocardiologist patients started calling me that over the years because I kept talking to them about paleo nutrition and the paleo lifestyle. And if we return to the wisdom of our ancestors, that we will achieve extraordinary health. And I thought it's kind of stuck with me, and I like the way it sounded. So when it came for the title of the book, and you kind of go over all these different titles in your head, it was kind of like, this really summarizes kind of me, what I am, who I am, and then also what the contents of the book are. And I've been called other names over the years. I've been called the crazy cardiologist and different derogatory terms, and I've been called natural cardiologist and holistic, so all of those fit, and sometimes I use them pretty interchangeably. When I say the paleo cardiologist, sometimes people get turned off by paleo. They think it's another buzzword or a catchword or the new fad of the day. And what I try and tell people is that the paleo nutrition and paleo lifestyle is what our ancestors have done for millions of years. And they enjoyed phenomenal health. There was no reason to think, and there's no literature or scientific evidence that says that they had any significant amounts of cancer or heart disease or diabetes. Why would we think that they do? And in fact, there's modern paleo societies, paleo peoples that are alive and healthy and thriving in their current environment.
I read in your book somewhere you mentioned some of your, was it students or I don't know who, that went over to some contemporary paleo tribal peoples. Was it something along those lines?
Yes.
What they witnessed? Maybe you can divulge a little.
Well, I have not traveled to places where paleo populations still exist. I've worked for a short time in a small country near South Africa and got to experience maybe a little bit over there. But otherwise it came from books. I mean, I'm reading PhDs and medical researchers, but also explorers, people that traveled around the world, the Captain Cooks and the Magellans and the Columbus, the documentation from them. Weston A. Price was a
Right.
dentist in the 1920s who traveled the world around with his wife by boat, and they went to all these paleo cultures. But then, I started kind of, I was taking medical students, and the medical students would hear me talking about this paleo nutrition, and a few of them had said, yeah, you know what, I went on a mission, and I was in the South Pacific, and I was swinging through the jungles, and there were plenty of older people there with long gray hair, and they were the elders of the society, and they were the wise ones that people look to, or maybe they were the medicine men of their communities.
Mm-hmm.
So, this whole, misnomer of the paleo man died young. Well, how would they have died young? They would have died from trauma. It would have
Yeah.
been a traumatic experience, and that's the only way that they would have died. They weren't dying from the common, what many call the white man's diseases.
Mm-hmm. Well, luckily for us, it sounds like if we adopted the paleo lifestyle, at least the aspects of danger, being attacked by wild animals and falling off cliffs, unless you choose to go in those places, can be pretty much avoided. So we
Yeah.
can enjoy those aspects, at least not the dangers that the people from that time experienced, which you said shorten their lives through injury, through death, sudden death. Um, Speaking of paleo, what is that word? I mean, we can't go out and buy a brontosaurus burger. Okay, we can't get dinosaur meat. We can't do do we even have access to the foods that they had, back then? Yes, contemporary hunter-gatherers eat what's available today in today's world. But I was curious, what is your definition of the word paleo? Is it anything different?
Well, what we're trying to do is, paleo refers to the time of the old Stone Age, or what is basically prehistoric records, before there was, records. So prehistoric time. So that would be from around 2 million years ago to the time of 10,000 years ago, when agriculture first came in, the agricultural revolution. This stuff is documented very well also in a book by Jared Diamond, like a guns, germs, steel. It was a runaway New York Times bestseller. Fantastic, thick, excellent book. So paleo refers to that particular time frame. Now, when you and I are talking, we're talking about a food, we're talking about a lifestyle. But no, we're not talking about swinging through the jungles and going to hunt. The majority of us are not going to do that, and we don't need to. We're talking about how do we live that kind of healthy lifestyle in today's world? How do we incorporate that into modern society?
Hmm.
And we just want to get back to those basics, to those foods, and do what we can from and a lifestyle standpoint. If we just say, well, our paleo ancestors 25,000 years ago, they walked a lot. Their form of physical activity was lifting up a boulder and throwing it over there, or building shelter, or yes, they would have, combat, one another. Their type of physical activity was clearly different from what we do today, which is either none, or the majority of people, if they do exercise, they're hopping on the treadmill for 45 minutes while watching their favorite television network, and that's not really the spirit of our paleo ancestors. It's about being active. It's about building muscle. And when people do that, once again, they're getting great results.
Well, speaking from personal experience, would you care to share your own personal transformation, if that's a good word, from pre-paleo lifestyle adoption to today? What you're doing today for your health?
Well, I'm a board certified cardiologist, so I went through 4 years of osteopathic medical school, 3 years of internal medicine residency, 3 years of cardiology fellowship. And after all that, I mean, I basically became a pill pusher, a procedure pusher. You just get so into and wrapped up in the drug and the procedure world. And there is a time and a place for modern medicine. But when it comes to prevention, they've got nothing. They really have nothing. So during my training, we just don't understand that. We are trained to think that the pharmaceuticals solve everything. We rarely talk about lifestyle. We rarely talk about nutrition and sleep and physical activity. And when I was out in practice for a couple years, I was starting to get frustrated. I was getting frustrated in the sense that I would see a patient, they'd be on 3 or 4 or 5 pharmaceuticals for blood pressure. Their blood pressure would still be high. They would have a heart attack. We would do a procedure, send them home a few days later. They'd come back in 3 months later with another heart attack or another episode of congestive heart failure. And you throw your hands up in the air and like, why is this happening? They didn't, we didn't talk about why. Well, we just talked about, hopefully they'll come up with a new pill or they'll come up with this or that, as opposed to becoming a doctor of cause. And when I met the woman who would become my wife, she's a chiropractor, opened up my eyes to the natural or holistic world and said, you've got to start finding out the cause. Why does someone have coronary artery disease? Why does someone have high blood pressure? Why does someone have heart rhythm issues? Why does someone develop cancer? And how do we prevent that? How do we treat that once someone has that condition? So that was pretty much my transformation to the natural and holistic world. It took me a few years to get out of my old practice. I was one of 40 doctors over there. I was a senior partner in that practice and, doing angiograms, pacemakers. 2012, left that, started my own practice, Wolfson Integrative Cardiology, and do a lot of blogging on our website, thedoctorswolfson.com.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And I'm, of course, very familiar with that. It's an awesome resource. But getting back to you and your clients, let's say, so what could you say about results achieved with using allopathic methods in the past? And of course, not divulging any confidential information like names of patients, but just 1 or 2 examples of people and their response to paleo prescriptions of your ilk.
Yeah. So one of the things that I point out to my patients and in my book, what I talk about is I want people to know the information. I want them to know what the risks are of pills and procedures, the benefits of pills and procedures, and the alternatives. So like I talk about in my book, or I talk about with patients, if you take a drug, it lowers your risk from here down to here. What I want to do now is I want to not lower your risk from here to here. I want to lower it all the way down, not from 5 to 4%, but from 5 to 0%. And that's what I think we can do using lifestyle changes and the right nutrition. And we're getting fantastic results with patients. We're getting patients off of pharmaceuticals on a daily basis. We're stopping blood pressure drugs safely by using nutrition, lifestyle changes, supplements, teaching people about sleep, about staying active, about getting the stress out of their lives, about meditation. And when it comes to cholesterol, issues, we really start to dig in depth to look at the most advanced blood testing markers to see what those look like, what their LDL particle numbers are, their particle sizes, their markers of inflammation. We look at genetics. We look at heavy metals, intracellular nutrients. What is the magnesium, the potassium, the calcium inside of the cell. So we can learn so much more information if we really spend time to become detectives on people's health issues. And I've taken a lot of people off of cholesterol-lowering drugs easily and safely. And just about every drug possible is something that we can stop and we can get away from, and it's very rewarding. I mean, nothing's more rewarding than getting someone off of pharmaceuticals to getting people to lose weight. I've got a patient who was over 500 pounds. Put him on paleo. It took him 3 years, but he lost 300 pounds in 3 years. So there's some really exciting stuff that we can do, and it's very gratifying for me to be able to do it. And do things safely, and the patients are loving it, and they're traveling all over the world to come see me.
Well, I have a couple of questions. I have to say though, right off the bat, when I looked at the lab tests that my previous cardiologist, and with all due respect, he's a great guy, and he actually put a stent in me, and whatever that was then. That was his philosophy, and he did a good job doing that,
Yep.
as opposed to
Yep.
screwing up the stent, right?
Right.
But when I look at his standard blood test for cholesterol readings and all that, I looked at his lab test, and I look at yours. You can't even compare the two. He's looking at like, I don't know, 20 things, and you're looking at like 200 things. You know,
Right.
I don't know if I have the numbers right, but there's a stark contrast and a difference between the things that you're looking at and what you've ordered through the test that are not even visible on his test. He's not even looking at these things at all. And that's what every standard cardiologist does. It's the standard test. And I gather probably that's only what insurance would pay for. And so that's what they get. And that's what they believe is enough. But after going through your testing, it's like, oh my God, there's so much that's actually missing from these other tests that finally we can actually look at the markers and possibly, in most cases, do something about it and watch the pattern to see if things change and make the adjustments, which would not have been possible unless I came to see you and, and got these kinds of tests and looking at it from a totally different perspective. Can you speak on that a little bit? And it tied in with, it's called the silent killer, cardiac disease. When should someone come and see you, someone like you, to start the investigation as a younger person before atherosclerosis or arteriosclerosis or whatever sets in and it's at an advanced stage?
Well, obviously, you can imagine I've seen so many people over the years and met so many people over the years that say, oh, you're a cardiologist. I'm glad I don't need you, and hope I never need you. Obviously, my opinion is, of course, everybody needs to see a holistic doctor, and preferably myself when it comes to cardiovascular disease. At the very least, read my book because, cardiovascular disease blockages start when we're young. In some cases, there's some evidence that says even when you're in your mother's womb, you're starting to form the early stages of plaque. Certainly endothelial dysfunction, the layer of cells that lines the blood vessels. This is, we can go back into, this is why it's so important, why a woman needs to be healthy even before she gets pregnant to make sure that she delivers the healthiest baby possible. There's things called epigenetics that stack up for generations. So what your great grandmother did affected your grandmother, affected your mother, and affects you in this generation. It's really interesting stuff. But listen. 99% of cardiologists. I'm not the only one like this. There are others like me, and there's more coming on in this holistic realm. But the other 99% of cardiologists, they don't even believe in checking the blood tests.
Yeah.
They just say, here, go on the maximum dose of the drug. They're getting away from even doing the most basic blood tests. And what's happening is that the doctors no longer have the time to spend with patients because there's so many patients, there's so much sickness, there's so much disease out there. So the cardiologists don't have a lot of time to spend. They spend 10 minutes. And in that 10 minutes, they're not going to go over, like you said, the 200 different blood tests that I offer to my patients. In most cases, they're not even looking at the 20 they ordered on you. They're looking to make sure that their drug isn't destroying your liver or destroying your kidneys. And when that's all clear, hey, you're good to go. And I'm not even going to necessarily bash what the drugs do, because in a lot of cases the drugs work, but the drugs work by this much. And we need to do better. We need to offer our patients better. We need to tell them the truth and say, hey, the drugs do this much, but we can do better. We can lower your risk by getting rid of all of these other factors. And it makes my job very exciting. And in a lot of ways, I feel bad for the typical cardiologist because they can't really do anything else. All they have is the pills and the ability to order tests and put in stents and bypass surgeries.
Right.
There's so much more to health and wellness than doing that.
Let me ask you, if I'm I'm an older guy now. If I was, my 20s, and I knew, or 30s, let's say, I have a good job and stress is building in my life, whatever, single, married, whatever. The point is, my family has a history of cardiac disease. Maybe it's on my mother's side, maybe it's on my father's side, maybe on both. This is common in American population. It's one of the what is it, the number one killer?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it goes back and forth with cancer, but let's just say that anything we do is going to help prevent both. But yes.
Yeah, there you go. It's in the top two. So when should I, at that young age, like you said, it could be starting when you're a fetus and as an embryo. So when should a person who has, let's say, at least a history, I think they should see you as someone like you, not a family doctor. They should start the investigative process early and get a handle on their lifestyle soon and their genetics, and see if they can do something about it before the caking up of the arteries start, before they hit a thrombosis or a plaque starts building. When should they do this? I mean, as early as possible, would you say, once they know that they have a history in the family?
Well, I don't claim to have all the solutions, Chris, but obviously I would say to you, when do you wish
Yeah.
you had encountered someone like me? I wish I encountered someone like me when I was 18, when I was 22, when I was 25. I don't have a family history of coronary artery disease. Now, obviously, everyone says they do because someone in everybody's family, coronary disease is so common, everyone thinks it's genetic, and it's very rarely genetic.
That's interesting. See, that's
Very
very
rare.
interesting. People still think it's actually the opposite. It's genetic.
Oh, yeah, I mean, as if we'd evolved over millions and millions of years to have bad genetics. It doesn't, the body's response is to heal. The body's response is not to cause heart attacks. But my what I wish I met someone like myself, like I said, when I was 18, because my father didn't die of coronary disease. He died of a strange, rare neurologic disease similar to Parkinson's, and he died at the age of 63. So what really helped me transform into a holistic cardiologist was my frustration in modern medicine, meeting my wife, but then seeing my father's demise, the cruel torture that he lived through the last few years of his life. That was certainly motivational for me to say, hey, I need to prevent what happened to him. Now, my father was a cardiologist. I was following in his footsteps in his career path, and I was following in his footsteps, for risk. Drinking too much alcohol, not getting enough sleep, not staying active, and certainly not caring about the food that I was eating. So yeah, I would love if someone would have shaken me when I was 18 and I was about to go off to college and kind of sat me down and was able to say, hey, listen, this is what's really going on this planet. I would have loved that. And I had a great time. A lot of things I wouldn't change. Obviously, that's part of the growing up process, but let's try and catch people before it's too late. Sure, we can order the blood test, we can have the conversation with them and just say, hey, listen, as you go forward through college, in your 20s and in your 30s, eat healthy food. Try and do organic as much as possible. If you're going to drink beer, go drink organic beer. If you want to drink vodka, with your friends, go get organic vodka.
Right.
You want to get just try and do things without the chemicals, and even just subtle changes we can make in people's lives, I think can make tremendous impact down the road. But children need to be taught this. Children need to be told the truth. What they do with the truth is up to them, but it's really society's job to teach it to them.
I agree with all that. And as a physical therapist, as a health professional, and now as someone more of an educator of others in medicine and health industry, in sports and fitness, I advise my students now, and we have some clients still, to ever since meeting you, if I see someone that's overweight and they have a history of heart disease in the family, because we do intakes, all of us do intakes and get a subjective history and a slight family history, even a trainer will do that. I would advise my students from now at this point forward, after meeting you, reading your book, The Paleo Cardiologist, and actually adopting the changes you asked me to, I would advise someone with a history to actually see you, at least to get you or someone like you, if they're not in
Mm-hmm.
here in Scottsdale, Arizona. I would actually refer them and say, listen, I'm here to take care of your pain, your musculoskeletal pain, orthopedic issues, but at the same time, I would make faster progress with you I believe if you go through screening for biomarkers that make you, you know, the side effect of these things could be tightness and you're not sleeping enough and your hormones are screwed up. You know, all these kinds of things could be going on, which slows down any response to any therapy that they're doing, including what I'm doing with the client. And so I advise my students have a referral network of other practitioners that do what you don't do, but you got to know who to send your clients to for proper screening. And I'm seeing for you and practitioners like you that I would send people with a history of CAD, coronary artery disease, maybe also overweight, maybe diabetic, all these things. I would actually send them to you because of your background, your knowledge, and your results with clients.
Listen, obviously the testing that we do, we're looking at markers of inflammation. And when you have inflammation, you're at higher risk of everything.
Yeah.
So wouldn't it be nice to show to a 21-year-old, to a 25-year-old, hey, you've got a lot of inflammation here on this blood test. Or we ran a food panel on you, and the food panel says that you are definitely sensitive to wheat, gluten, dairy, corn, or soy, or whatever it says. Or, you know what? We ran this in-depth blood test on you, and it says that you're pre-diabetic. And we can diagnose this all day long in teenagers, and I mean I've seen them as patients, 20 years old, and they're not even necessarily overweight. They're athletes that you've seen before.
Yeah.
They're 25 years old, and all they really care about is performance. And a lot of them maybe can get away on fast food, cookies and cupcakes and soda pop. But I think obviously in your realm and in the sports, world in which you operate, it's the days of kind of slugging down calorie, dense, nutrient empty, drinks and foods are gone. I've seen professional athletes, and and sometimes they come to me and they're already on board with a healthy program. Sometimes a lot of it's foreign to them, but how could we think that their athletic performance wouldn't be infinitely better when they're eating the right foods and living the right lifestyle?
Exactly.
It is.
Well, drawing the interview to a close, I'd like to slowly end with a couple of things. One, my last question to you probably is what would be, if you can, put it in a nutshell, what are the 3 action steps someone could take to see if the paleo lifestyle works for them? If that's what you advise, to try it out.
Okay, so as far as paleo nutrition, it's about eating like our hunter gatherers ate in a modern society. The foundation of our paleo pyramid is vegetables, and then free range grass fed meats, wild seafood, nut seeds, eggs, avocados, coconuts, and a little bit of fruit in season. If you're more athletic, maybe a little more fruit, maybe a little more potatoes. Maybe some of those gluten-free grains, such as quinoa, teff. Some of that stuff can be allowed if you're very active. Trying out that plan for them. It worked for our ancestors for millions of years. It's going to work for them. So that would be number 1 as far as adopting paleo. Number 2, I think the importance of sleep is dramatically and drastically overlooked. And I know this for myself, working as a cardiologist for years, and I would pride myself on, I only got 4 hours of sleep last night, and now look at me, I'm putting in a pacemaker. I mean, it was just crazy what we were doing. And the science is there, the literature is there that talks about the increased risk in heart attacks and strokes and cancers from people that aren't getting enough sleep. So we want that 8 hours of sleep. Our ancestors went to sleep with the sundown and awoke with the sunrise. And then finally, the third thing I would say, Chris, is that everybody needs to look at every single thing in their lives and say, quite simply, is this toxic or is this not? Is this laundry detergent, fabric softener, dryer sheets, perfumes, colognes, lotions, is this toxic or is it not? Before my wife, I never had a massage or any kind of body work ever done to me. After my wife, I've gone many times because she said, you need this to stay healthy. Oh, I don't want to spend the money. Well, you need this in order to stay healthy. So when we go for massage, we bring our own organic coconut oil.
Nice.
You're putting that onto my skin, but also for the therapist to be working on us. Every time they're like, wow, this is incredible. And I think more places are getting more into it and people are more cognizant of it. But once again, everybody needs to look at, the new paint, the new flooring, the new furniture, the new car. And you can drive yourself nuts on this pretty quickly, but for people like you and I, Chris, it's about giving people the answers. What they do with the answers, that's up to them. But don't say I didn't tell you, to stop smoking.
Right.
Everybody knows that. Now, don't say I didn't tell you to get rid of the laundry detergent, fabric softener, dryer sheets, the new smells, and try and do the best you can. Make a difference. You can't do everything, but you can definitely do a lot.
No one's ever done an experiment to see the influence of all these chemicals in our food, environment, air, water, wherever they're coming from. No one can possibly tell us it's safe or not, safe. So we have to assume the cumulative effect over the years of even these little, even though they're minute doses, it can't be good for you. And the government will allow parts per billion of all kinds of crap, benzene and other things in your water. It's allowed.
Yep.
Because they said, this parts per billion, this isolated compound or element or whatever it is, won't affect you beyond at this level. Yes, but compounded with all these other things, if you add it, it's an additive effect of multiple poisons and toxins in the water and in the air that they're allowing. The federal government allows singular elements because they've studied singular elements. Parts per billion. This has been my beef for years. And say, okay, you study that one element, but there's not one element out there in the air. There's lots of all kinds of poisons, and you mix it together. What is that? It's a toxic soup.
Right.
So we don't know. Those kinds of things are affecting us, and no one knows the effects of that. So we have to eliminate. I agree 100% with you. You got to eliminate it where you can find it. Yeah. But you're still going to get it.
Right. The when you mention the parts per billion and stuff like that, how do you think pharmaceuticals act? Pharmaceuticals act on the parts per billion realm, and they work very dramatically. I mean,
wow.
When you take an antibiotic, when you take a statin drug, when you take a blood pressure drug, it's just, little teeny tiny molecules that disperse throughout the body and have activity. Think about what a small percentage of if you were to drink a sip or two of alcohol, most people can detect physiologic changes from that tiny bit of alcohol, and how small of parts per million a molecule like that is. So to think that. As you said, all of these different chemicals, they frankly, even individually, most of them haven't been studied, let alone when a newborn baby is born with 200 different chemicals in the cord blood. 200 different chemical compounds, synthetic compounds, are found in the blood of a baby on average, according to the Environmental Working Group, nonpartisan group in California. Yeah, it's scary. We are the experiment. They are experimenting on us.
Yeah, well, I could talk about this all day, but we're going to have to bring this interview to a close. But it was awesome spending this time with you. I really enjoyed it. I hope you as listeners and viewers enjoyed it. I'm sure you did. And if you want to know more, you can't see Dr. Wolfson personally, and I'll give you a chance to tell us where we can find you on the internet, Dr. Wolfson. But you can get the Paleo Cardiologist book. It's actually ranked in one of the top books in the alternative medicine book research of category of Amazon. I looked it up. So congratulations on that. And where can they get, basically Amazon.com they can get it, or on your website?
Yes, on Amazon, and it's kind of gone interchangeably as far as number one on Amazon in the alternative medicine reference category. and so they can get it there. They can also get it on my website, on my wife and I website, thedoctorswolfson.com, and doctors is abbreviated DRS. We would love to have anyone who's listening join us on Facebook at the Doctors Wolfson, other social media at the Doctors Wolfson, and on our website, I'm trying to come up with new and interesting blog posts and trying to make it a little more scientific for those that are really into the science and get science heavy with it. And we've got a few recipes on there. And it's I want to say thanks so much, Chris, for having me on today. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, and you're going to be, are you speaking at the Paleo Summit, or what is that called? Can you tell viewers about when that is and what do you do?
Yes, I mean if they're in Austin, Texas, it's called Paleo FX, or if they want to travel to Austin, Texas, it's the biggest paleo event in the world. They get about 3,500 people there, over 100 vendors, speakers that are huge in the paleo world. Mark Sisson, for people that know him from Primal Blueprint, and Rob Wolf of the Paleo Solution, and all the heavy hitters in the paleo world are going to be there. I'm speaking on Saturday afternoon, and then I'll be on a doctors only panel on Sunday afternoon. Beautiful Austin, Texas, and if anyone listens to this and they come down there, say hello. Would love to meet you.
Well, awesome. Well, with that, we'll draw to a close. Again, thanks so much for your time and for your knowledge and for your advice. And you heard it from the source, listeners and viewers, Dr. Jack Wolfson, the Paleo Cardiologist. You can get his book at Amazon.com or see him live at Paleo FX this year. You can look that up on Google to see where you can maybe still register and attend that conference. So with that, thanks for listening, and ta-ta for now, as we say.